KSRO. Well, once again, it's time to examine what is happening in Muslim communities across the world and right here in the USA. Are Muslims integrating into Western lifestyles, or is it the other way around? How does acclimation affect the growing threat from radical Islam? Joining us on the KSRO Live Line is M. Zuhdi Jasser of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Mr. Jasser, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Oh, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Americans and other Westerners just keep asking the question every time there's a terrorist incident or not, why does Islam hate us?
Well, the faith does not hate. Certainly there are interpretations of Islam, what I believe are Islamists, those who believe in the supremacy of the Islamic State, hate the West, hate freedom, and hate liberty. And as we saw, especially in this attack in Brussels, one cell committed two different acts 4 months apart, and you had not only a cell but an organism of a community protecting that radical for months. So yes, we have a problem within the House of Islam, but it is Muslims ourselves who are going to fight and defeat this. And America knows this battle. Our founding fathers fought against theocracy from within the Christian faith, and right now Islam is in that same time in history.
Of course, in America, we have freedom of religion, and in the Constitution written in, when you hear candidates like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump say they're going to do these extreme measures with a certain population of the society, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, listen, my work of reform, I helped found the Muslim reform movement. We can't do this work unless we come to terms and get past the denial, and political correctness is killing us. But I will tell you that while political correctness kills us, if we don't get it correct, that will also be wrong. So we have to make sure that we don't just do skin-deep sort of visceral responses that some of the candidates, especially Mr. Trump, say at times, but rather be accurate and be precise and engage Muslims that are part of the solution and marginalize Muslims that are part of the problem. So, when Mr. Cruz talks about monitoring, yes, the New York PD should have continued its monitoring program. Monitoring does not do away with any civil rights. I'm not going to sacrifice any of my constitutional rights, but we should engage the community. Good police work involves, curbside, granular police work where they know our community so that we're not doing this always post-mortem after an attack happens.
Behind the political bombast that comes with every election cycle, it seems like there's a lot of good work, solid police work, solid intelligence that goes on very quietly. Are we knitting together, or at least making the attempt behind the scenes to bring these communities into an effort to stop the jihadists?
I don't think we are. I think, even the program itself that our Homeland Security is doing, by calling it countering violent extremism, they're missing the point. It's countering violent Islamism. And yet many Muslim groups prevent us from doing that because they are afraid that it will target the community. We're caught between two extremes. One extreme that doesn't want to do anything and continue in denial, and the other extreme that feels that every Muslim could be a possible terrorist. And they're both wrong. We need to thread the needle. We need to understand that this is a fight against a theopolitical enemy that runs countries from Iran to Saudi Arabia to ISIS and on. So we have a lot of work to do, and Americans can do this. We're smart enough to do it. And like you said, we have to get past the bombast and get to accuracy in policy. You can't have a good short-term policy in our communities locally unless you know where we're going long-term in strategy.
Can we actually tolerate a no-go zone like was in Brussels, the Malmeek neighborhood that had thousands of Muslims who were protecting somebody like the suspects from the Brussels bombing? Can we allow that to actually happen, Sharia law within a nation within a nation?
We should never sacrifice our principles in America. This is a battle between secular freedom and theocracy. But also Muslims need to have the environment to reform these ideas and practice religious freedom. And, no-go zones don't really exist in America, but what exists is almost like a mental no-go zone where you have enclaves in our mindset where Muslim communities are not engaged. They're separatist in their media, their faith communities, academics, and books. In order to reform these things, we need to have the conversations just like you're having now, not only for a few days after an attack, but every week in our faith communities and across the country to begin to look at where do these radicals come. They're not radicalized overnight. They're radicalized over weeks and over years by communities that tell us that we are under siege rather than telling us that we have some hard work to get through a 12-step program of reform.
Well, we don't have much time left, but I have to be blunt here. I have been personally targeted, and I know others who have in the broadcast community who continue to have these conversations about Islam, and we get targeted by Council for the American Islamic Relations, CARE, and others like that, an organization that likes to use intimidation to shut people up.
Yeah, they do that because they're trying to enact blasphemy laws in America. They are targeting me often, even though I'm a devout Muslim who loves my faith. They will target me as being anti-Muslim and bigoted. Why? They'd much rather target the messengers who get it right than deal with the message of reform and admit that those of us who love our faith are actually the ones who want to lead reform, and they'd rather continue to exploit our faith community by telling them that they are victims rather than telling them they need to lead reform. So keep up the good work. The more there are of us doing this type of work, the more that they will wither on the vine. They're doing the work of Saudis and others to prevent reform in Islam, and this is the only pathway forward.
Mr. Jasser, thank you so much for joining us, and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate it.
Mzudi Jasser of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy.